The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.
The stock market has gained almost $3 trillion in value since the election, a record. Last week, the stock market soared to record highs, highest ever, boosting the pensions and your retirement accounts. The stock market reached yet another all-time, in history, all-time high today.
That was President Donald Trump, your president, taking credit for the market's performance over the last year and a half, over the last 2 years. And the market giveth and the market taketh away. Jay Carney, who worked for President Obama, said in a tweet that one of the reasons they never took credit for the success in the stock market was because if you take credit for the successes, then you have to take credit for the failures. And yesterday, as we saw according to CNN Money, the single largest point drop in history, we have to ask the question, is Donald Trump going to take credit for the crash on yesterday? Some people are calling it a flash crash or a corrective crash, but a crash nonetheless. Perhaps not something that's going to last throughout today. We see at the open of the markets, there's some gains that have been made, making up some of yesterday's losses. But if you're going to take credit for the successes, Donald Trump, surely you're going to take credit for the losses. And we already know the answer to that is no. To put in context the significance of yesterday's drop, Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg of Amazon and Facebook, respectively, lost over $3 billion each in value and wealth on yesterday. And I'm not going to shed a tear for them. You know, who cares, right? But I won't shed a tear because most Americans, the vast majority of us, probably only have a pittance of an amount in the stock market vis-a-vis our 401ks, if that. The fact of the matter is more Americans exist completely outside the realm of what happens on Wall Street than are affected by it. There are multiple tiers of economies, but we can group it into two if we are reductionists, the haves and the have-nots. The majority of Americans are have-nots. There's a wonderful piece that came out from the People's Policy Project over there with Matt Brunig. They're doing great work. Go check them out, peoplespolicyproject.org. And based on his study, the median young family has nearly zero wealth. The median young family, and he says young, around the age of 35, has nearly zero wealth. And I want to read a portion of it. Here is the median net worth for young families. He said, I include both the net worth concept used by the Federal Reserve and a modified net worth concept that excludes vehicles. Insofar as vehicles are rapidly depreciating consumer durables, many argue that they should not be counted as assets for these purposes. Without these vehicles, the median young family had a net worth of $1,250 in 2016. This was down from the $7,846 peak in 1995. And so to translate that, he's basically saying if you're calculating the value of someone's car, then their net worth is about $10,722. If you're calculating without the value of a car, because as we all know, cars are not really wealth. Cars take your wealth as soon as they get outside of the warranty. If you take the wealth, the value of your net worth, and you subtract the value of your car, most young Americans only have a net worth of $1,250. That's, when you think about that, then you understand why. Who cares what happened on the stock market yesterday? Because most of us aren't going to be affected by it. Some of you are listening to me. Some of you do have money there and you probably lost something. You probably, don't want to look at your 401k. The best advice that I could give you is the same advice people give me. The same advice everyone says. Don't sell when it's low. Just ride it out. You'll be fine. Right. But for the majority of us, probably don't even know if we have any money in the 401k. And if we did, we had to take it out in order to survive for a period where we were check to check. So, but back to your president. Of course, he's not going to take credit for this. He's not going to say a word. One of the funniest things that happened, I want to play this clip from Fox News and take a listen to what happened yesterday as Donald Trump was getting praised for the success of the economy.
And thanks to your tax cuts, we see continued success in the future.
We're interrupting for breaking news. There is quite a drop happening on Wall Street. A massive sell-off is happening today. Moments ago, we were down more than 900 points on the session, 3.5%.
And of course, the president of the United States is not going to take responsibility for the failure of the markets, the crash on yesterday, nor should he take credit for the markets when it's successful. But if you're going to take credit for it when it's up, you have to take responsibility for it when it's down. But when has Donald Trump ever taken responsibility for anything? But I want to double back to Matt Brunig's piece on People's Policy Project, and I want to read the summary. And I definitely think you should go over there and read it, the entire piece, and look at all of the data points, because it's staggering when you realize the state that most young Americans are in. He said, quote, "Younger people have lower incomes, higher debts, and virtually no wealth to speak of. They have seen their schooling not pay off and spent the entirety of their young working life in an economy operating below full employment. You don't need to be an economic reductionist to understand why they were primed for Bernie Sanders and why so many view socialism favorably." Hear, hear. I mean, you don't have to be an economist to understand that this generation, people my age and younger, we were born into an economy that does not favor hard work and all of the cliches that they told us to get a good education, and the money that we invested into school and to college that just didn't pay off. Not for the vast majority. Yes, there's a handful of people who are doing well from our generation, but look at the study from Triple P, we'll call it. It's just the median. That means half of young people, 35 and under, have less than $1,000 of wealth to their names. This doesn't bode well for the future of this country, this economy, or capitalism. And that's whether it's a Republican president or a Democratic president. It doesn't matter. Six Baltimore police officers have pled guilty to fraud and racketeering charges. And a part of their guilty plea includes the confession that they planted or carried replica BB guns that they would plant on victims of people they shot. Now, the officers who were testifying to their crimes did not specifically say if they did it, but they said that they were prepared to do it. And as the story goes on, it's a significant story that actually isn't getting much coverage. And I saw it originally last Thursday, I believe, and just getting around to it today, Tuesday. But it just goes to show you how used to this we are and how shocking this no longer is. It really should take us back, especially in light of the fact of all the people who are fighting for justice, all the things that we've been saying over and over and over again. And here is a case where officers are actually testifying. 4 officers are testifying against 2 who denied the charges. Daniel Herschel and Marcus Taylor, they've denied the charges, but 6 other officers have pled guilty, and now 4 of those 6 are testifying against them. And it's a clear case of evidence of the type of corruption that happens within police culture. And to be sure, this is not just these are not just white officers who did this. There are quite a few black officers who were involved who pled guilty and are now testifying against 2 other officers. So this is not, I want you to take this next sentence slowly. This is not only about race. It is about white supremacy and how people of any color can participate in that system. Who do you think was targeted? See, the case itself may not be about race or the corruption may not be about race because there are black people, brown officers, and white officers who are involved in this racketeering case. But the victims of this, the victims of their crimes, overwhelmingly are black. That almost goes without saying. It's embedded in our culture that black people particularly and brown people are the targets of police corruption, police brutality, and police shootings. So who do you think were the victims on the receiving end of these fake weapons that were planted or prepared to be planted by Baltimore Police Department police officers? Black people and brown people. So while on the face of it, you see the mugshot that went around. I shared that. You see, it's like 6 officers, and I think about 4 of them are black, or maybe 3 of them are black. But it's a very diverse mix of officers who are complicit in this, and many of them have pled guilty. But the victims of this overwhelmingly black. And this just goes to show you that once you become a police officer, it's no longer about your race. It's about your badge. We've always seen throughout American history, throughout history, where people become co-conspirators with their oppressors and in turn oppress their own people. So that's not even a revelation. That's basic knowledge at this point. But it just shows you the headwinds that we're up against. Look at the extent to which they are willing to go to exonerate themselves of a potential crime. They're preparing themselves to be able to have a defense in case they accidentally shoot somebody. This not only are we up against major headwinds in terms of getting justice in this overall fight against police brutality, systemic oppression, not only are we facing significant headwinds there, but people on the streets. What are the odds? You run into a police officer who is prepared to cover up his shooting of you. He already has an excuse to get himself out of trouble if he quote unquote accidentally shoots you. Really think about that. I don't really even know what to compare that to. There's not really many things that you can compare that to where you are preemptively prepared to give yourself an alibi just in case you shoot somebody in the normal course of doing your job, your day-to-day business. I know what to call it. I call it criminal behavior that is rooted in our policing agencies. And I'm sure, without a shadow of a doubt, that Baltimore is not the only place where this happens. And the question is how do we preemptively stop this? See, one of the problems I've had with the Department of Justice, even underneath Barack Obama and Eric Holder, was that they were reactionary. They only really addressed problems in cities like Ferguson and Baltimore after someone was killed. Right? And so the question is, how many people have to die for us to get an investigation that exposes the level of corruption and the level of systemic oppression that takes place in these cities? Realistically, the answer should be none. But sadly, if our investigations never kick in until after someone is killed, then sadly, someone has to die before this type of corruption is investigated by our Department of Justice. They're reactionary. They're not proactive. And if we see these types of events popping up where now we have officers who are testifying to the level of crimes that they committed, the money that they stole, they would break into people's homes. This is all in the case in Baltimore. They will break into people's homes, take money, plant evidence, and they carry around weapons to give themselves an alibi just in case they shot somebody in the course of doing their job. If this is the type of stuff that's coming out of one police department, how many of the police departments across the country do you think that this is present in? If at a minimum it warrants an investigation by our Department of Justice to ensure that the civil rights of their citizens are not being violated. But yet, we're barely even hearing about this story on the news. Shame on all of us in the media.
Are you going to talk tomorrow? I'm looking forward to it, actually.
You want to?
Do you have a date set?
Here's the story.
Do you have a date set,
There's
Mr.
been no
President?
collusion whatsoever. Yeah. There's no obstruction whatsoever. And I'm looking forward to it. I do worry when I look at all of the things that you people don't report about with what's happening. If you take a look at, the 5 months worth of missing texts, that's a lot of missing texts. And as I said yesterday, that's prime time. So you do sort of look at that and say, what's going on? you do look at certain texts where they talk about insurance policies or insurance, where they say the kinds of things they're saying. You got to be concerned. But I would love to do that. I'd like to do it as soon as possible. So here's the story.
Do you have a date set, Mr. President?
I don't know. No, I guess you're talking about 2 or 3 weeks, but I would love to do it.
In person.
You know, again, I have to say, subject to my lawyers and all of that, but I would love to do it.
Well, the New York Times is reporting that Donald Trump's attorneys are advising him against speaking with Special Counsel Bob Mueller out of concerns that he will perjure himself. I want to read directly from the piece in the New York Times. Lawyers for President Trump have advised him against sitting down for a wide-ranging interview with Special Counsel Robert Mueller III, according to 4 people briefed on the matter, raising the specter of a month-long court battle over whether the president must answer questions under oath. They went on to say, and I think this is the most important paragraph, his lawyers are concerned that the president, who has a history of making false statements and contradicting himself, could be charged with lying to investigators. Their stance puts them at odds with Mr. Trump, who has said publicly and privately that he is eager to speak with Mr. Mueller as part of the investigation into possible ties between his associates in Russian elections, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the point is that his attorneys know that the president of the United States is a habitual liar and that it's all but impossible for him to sit down and speak with anyone under oath and not perjure himself. It's good advice from the attorneys. Let's start there. This is actually the best advice they could possibly give him. Donald Trump, the last thing that he should do is to sit down and speak with anyone about anything that is under oath, because he has proven himself to be a person who cannot tell the truth, otherwise known as a liar. And it's comedic gold. Right? I mean, at least he was smart enough to say in that clip that I played, subject to his attorney's, approval, But it's not as though they're making this approval based on the terms of the agreement, right? It's not, and actually, let me correct myself. It's not as though they're telling him not to speak with Bob Mueller because the terms of the speaking arrangements are not conducive to Donald Trump. They have arrangements in terms of where they're going to do it, who's going to be present, is it under oath, what's the environment, what's the time frame, et cetera, et cetera. That's not, none of those reasons are the reasons why they're saying he shouldn't testify or speak with under oath or otherwise. They're saying it because Donald Trump is a liar, and they know that he could perjure himself and be charged with, and perjure is not really the right word, but it's the best word to kind of understand it. But perjury generally means, like in a court trial, in this case, just lying to, whether you're in a trial or not, lying to federal investigators, particularly the FBI, is itself a crime. And his attorneys have absolutely no confidence in the president to be able to sit down and for any significant amount of time tell truthful statements. I'm not going to make commentary about what does that mean. Here we are. We have a president who can't even tell the truth for a 10-minute interview or a 10-hour interview. I'm not going to make those comments because we already understand where we are, and we already understand the type of president that we have. I'm done making commentary on the hypocrisy of people who still believe in him, people who still support him, evangelicals. I'm not going to make any commentary along those lines. I'm just going to sit back and laugh at the reality that this is where we are, and those people still believe in him. I'm laughing at it because it is so absurd. We are at the pinnacle, the apex of absurdity in the United States of America, where half of America, or at least half of the voting population, believes that Donald Trump is sent from God to do God's work. And the reality of it is that he's just a lying son of a, shut your mouth. So this creates a complicated problem for the president because the attorneys are advising against him voluntarily testifying or speaking to the FBI doesn't mean that he's off scot-free. Bob Mueller could subpoena him, and that would create a lengthy court process of finding out whether or not the president can actually be forced to testify. In most cases, you would hope that the president would just willingly testify to avoid going through those hurdles. And I think, the question is Donald Trump actually going to take the advice of his attorneys? Because what does that say about him that he may have to be subpoenaed to speak? One thing Donald Trump is worried about more than anything else, not the truth, not justice, not his job as president. It's his pride, his reputation, his ego. His ego, more than his reputation, his ego and his pride. And if he feels some type of way slighted by the world watching as federal investigators and special counsel Bob Mueller are going through a subpoena process, then his ego may get the better of him and he'll just say, okay, I'm going to testify. This is going to be a fascinating time. I tell you that the only thing I can say about this is that this, and this is in a really sadistic way. This is not something I'm excited about, but it is kind of like a accident on the side of the road. You just can't help but to look. This is what the presidency is underneath Donald Trump. And, in a very dark and sadistic kind of way, it's extremely exciting to see all of the madness that's going on and to not really know how this plays out. I mean, where do we go from here? How do we recover from this? Do we recover from this, or do we keep going down the slippery slope of stupidity? Well, how will the Republican Party, how will they recover from this? Are they just going to, brush this Trump era off as, just another Republican president and move on as if nothing ever happened? Or will they take a moment to reflect on where they got to and how they got there so quickly? This is fascinating. This is a good time to be in political science, to actually study these things, to see where we go from here. And then to come to terms with the fact that we actually have no idea how this is going to play out. One last story before I go. There's trending on Twitter right now what Black Panther means to me. There's something funny and fascinating that happens in the black community when something, let's say pop culture, comes out from the black community that ostensibly is representative of the black struggle and black excellence. And, it's like a symbolic thing that rises to the top foments to the top of the national conversation in the black community. And you have a really quick, fast power struggle. You have some people who try to fight it and say, oh, this cultural significant moment is really just something from the man who, ultimately is winning in the background. Don't take this and don't believe this to be something positive for the black community because it's not coming by my book. And then the other half of Black America is like, this is the most significant black moment in the history of black moments. This is the most important thing that could possibly ever happen to black people. And of course, I'm speaking in hyperbole to demonstrate the absurdity of the extremes. But these type of conversations happen. And it's happening around the movie Marvel Presents The Black Panther. And I am going on Monday to a screening here in Atlanta. Me and my co-host got tickets, invited to a Twitter event, Blackbirds, which is the Black Coalition of Twitter Employees. They're hosting an event where the director and the actors will be answering questions, Q&A, and then we'll watch the movie. So, I'm moving on up, right? What does Black Panther mean to me? I don't know until I see it, to be quite honest. I am significantly proud. I am overwhelmingly proud of just the imagery, and it's funny because this movie takes place in Africa, Wakanda, the fictional nation of Wakanda. And so it's separated from the African-American experience, the black experience. Remember what we talked about last week, where being black in America is uniquely different than being an African, right? I have more in common with, the white guy listening to this podcast from Pennsylvania than I do with the people of Africa and the fictional nation of Wakanda. However, it's still just the representation of blackness that you don't really get to see in media. And this is why I don't begrudge people who look at representation as important. I am one of those people who says representation of blackness is so important. Let me give you an example. When we were in Boston, my kids met my wife's sorority sister in Boston, and she's a doctor. and, love her to death. She came down when my wife had the baby last week. But while we were in Boston, which is only 3% black, my children saw her and were instantly floored because they had never seen a brown, that's what they said at the time, but they had never seen a brown or black doctor. All the doctors they ever saw were white. And my son made note of it, and it made a significant impact, and he kept bringing it up over and over and over again. And so it just really resonated with me. And my daughter, of course, she loves Doc Stuffins because Doc Stuffins looks like her. And you don't realize how important it is. Even if it's not important to you, you really don't realize how important it is until you see it happening in your children. Because America has great icons and great symbols all around us every single day of whiteness and the beauty of whiteness and European beauty standards. And, and then you don't really realize how you fit into that until you realize that you're not that. If that makes any sense. You don't really realize that you're black until you realize that you don't match. You don't look like the people on television that are put up for you to see all the time. And then when you do see it, it does something for your soul. It gives you a sense of belonging. Should it? Maybe not, but it does. And for everyone who belittles that, I don't know what to tell you, except perhaps, honestly, I don't know what to tell you. Some people are intellectual pimps, and they intentionally do not allow themselves to feel that because they know they can corner a market in which they can criticize and be contrarian and attack anything that presents positive images in pop culture of blackness. And all they have to do is give the counterpoint, and they can get about 100,000 clicks. Some people are intellectual pimps, and they do that. To those people, I'm not speaking to. I'm speaking to the people who genuinely have an ambivalence, and they're feeling ambivalent about these pop culture representations of blackness being celebrated by black people as something that is culturally significant and groundbreaking. And here I am in the middle saying, let's go see the movie. Let's see how good it's going to be. I don't think that it's going to be a crap movie just because of the previews and because of the director. He directed Fruitvale Station. He directed Creed, the boxing movie, the Rockies sequel, I guess. So I think it's going to be a good movie. But if you ask me what does Black Panther mean to me, I would say potentially a lot, because my son and my daughter get to see images of blackness as superheroes on the level of anything else that is on television and in the movies right now. And if my children got so excited about just seeing a black doctor for the first time, how do you think they're going to feel when Chadwick Boseman dons his Black Panther uniform? I'm excited about it. So what does it mean to me? I don't know yet. I'll let you know what it means to me. Hashtag what Black Panther means to me. I'll let you know after I see the movie, but potentially it means a lot. So we'll see. That's all the time I have for you today. Thanks so much for hanging out with me. It is always a pleasure. Make sure you go to patreon.com/the BPD show and become a patron today. Thanks to all of our newest patrons. We're building back up. I mean, we took a serious hit. People. But we've had new patrons sign up every day this week, and we need you to go over there and continue to be support the Benjamin Dixon Show as I create this content for you. That's my cue music. That means I'm out of time. I've got to go. See you tomorrow. Take care.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.